Hello class 10, we are again here back with the next part of how do organisms reproduce. Now in this part we will be talking about sexual reproduction. Now we'll be discussing that first why sexual reproduction. You all are very well aware of the mode of reproduction in where two parents are involved. You also know that bulls alone cannot produce new calves, nor hens alone can produce new chicks. In such cases, both sexes, males and females, are needed to produce new generation. Now we'll be discussing first that what is the significance of this sexual mode of reproduction. You know that the creation of two new cells from one involves copying of the DNA as well as from the cellular apparatus. The DNA copying mechanisms cannot be absolutely accurate, and the resultant errors are a source of variations in the populations of organisms. Every individual organism cannot be protected by variations, but in a population, variations are usually for ensuring the survival of the species. While DNA copying mechanisms are not absolutely accurate, they are precise enough to make the generation of variation a fairly slow process. If the DNA copying mechanism were to be less accurate, many of the resultant DNA copies would not be able to work and the cellular apparatus would die. Each new variation is made in a DNA copy that already has variations accumulated from previous generations. Thus, two different individuals in a population would have quite different patterns of accumulated variations. Since all these variations are in living individuals, it is assured that they do not have any really bad effects. Combining variations from two or more individuals would thus create new combinations of variants. Each combination would be novel since it would involve two different individuals. The sexual mode of reproduction incorporates such a process of combining DNA from two different individuals during reproduction. In multicellular organisms with more complex body structure, they have specialized lineage cells which help in sexual reproduction. These cells have half the number of chromosomes and half the amount of DNA as compared to the non reproductive body cells, which are produced by the germline cells by the process of meiosis. Thus, when these germ cells from two individuals combine during sexual reproduction to form a new individual, it results in re-establishment of the number of chromosomes and the DNA content in the new generation. As the body design become more complex, the germ cells also specialize. One germ cell is large and contains the food stores, while the other is smaller and likely to be motile. The motile germ cell is called the male gamete, and the germ cell containing the stored food is called the female gamete. Now let us start with the sexual reproduction in flowering plants. The reproductive parts of angiosperms are located in the flower, and you have already studied about different parts of the flower in your 7th class. That is, they have sepals, petals, stamens and carpels. Stamens and carpels are the reproductive parts of a flower which contain the germ cells. The flower may be unisexual, that it may have just one, either male or female reproductive part, for example in papaya, watermelon, and it could be bisexual, that is, both stamens and the carpels are present in the flower, for example, hibiscus, mustard, mango, etc. Now, stamen is the male reproductive part and it produces pollen grains that are yellowish in color. You must have seen this yellowish powder that often sticks to our hand if we touch the stamen of a flower. Carpel is present in the center of a flower and is the female reproductive part. It is made up of three parts. The swollen bottom part is the ovary, middle elongated part is the style, and the terminal part, which may be sticky, is the stigma. The ovary contains ovules and each ovule has an egg cell. The male germ cell produced by pollen grain fuses with the female gamete present in the ovule. This fusion of the germ cells or fertilization gives us the zygote, which is capable of growing into a new plant. Thus, the pollen needs to be transferred from the stamen to the stigma. If this transfer of pollen occurs in the same flower, it is referred to as self-pollination. On the other hand, if the pollen is transferred from one flower to another, it is known as the cross-pollination. This transfer of pollen from one flower to another is achieved by agents like wind, water, or animals. After the pollen lands on a suitable stigma, it has to reach the female germ cells which are in the ovary. For this, a tube grows out of the pollen grain and travels through the style to reach the ovary. Now, after fertilization, that is the post fertilization changes, the zygote divides several times to form an embryo within the ovule. The ovule develops a tough coat and is gradually converted into a seed. The ovary grows rapidly and ripens to form a fruit. Meanwhile, the petals, sepals, stamen, style, and stigma may shrivel and fall off. The seed contains the future plant or embryo which develops into a seedling under appropriate condition. This is called as germination. Now we shall study reproduction in human beings in the next video. Thank you.